Welcome to the Church Resource, where we talk about the best resources for pastors, leaders, and lay people. I'm your host, Jeff Oliver. Today we're looking at Return to the Margins. This is by Terry Coy, and Terry works with the Southern Baptist of Texas Convention. He has been a church planter for decades and a very faithful worker in the church, and just want to recommend this book to you. It is subtitled Understanding and Adapting as a Church to Post-Christian America. So he doesn't even bother with the titles or labels of postmodern or post-postmodern or even post-post-post, but because I have heard those labels used seriously. So he is just talking about post-Christian America, where it's not understood, it's not assumed anymore that we have a Christian society or that people come from a Christian mindset or background or perspective. Certainly, worldviews are are just varied. So that's what people are dealing with now, and so we just cannot go into the church or really into any conversation with somebody thinking that they are from a Christian perspective, because many are not. So as we consider that as a part of the kind of the foundation of this book, I want to point out a few things to you. Terry gets right to it here in the first part of the book and says that, look, here's the issue. We're in that world where, again, we can't assume anything about people's background or their worldview. But here's how we deal then in taking the gospel, evangelizing a world that is now many times opposed to our way of thinking, to our worldview. And so he says here there are pretty much 5 things that we need to look out for and that we can assume are going on here. So he says there's a loss of freedom to articulate and express our beliefs, especially in the academic world, in the political arena, and in the media. And so he says that coming up, as we are in fact seeing that now, this book is about 10 years old, and so I think there's a little bit of a prophetic nature to this book, because we definitely are seeing this on the rise, as it was even kind of fomenting then. But he says that we will see more talk of hate speech, that the things that we say, that as we stand on the truth of God, that they will be considered hate speech by others who, it just makes them uncomfortable. They are not just not happy that we're expressing an opinion that is in fact founded in truth, but an opinion that's different from theirs. So he says that we will see that things like preaching and teaching the exclusivity of Jesus Christ, that there's only one way to God, to restoration with that relationship with God. Also that us saying that homosexual behavior is sin, and even the overt practice of evangelism, like that's too in your face now to be able to share your opinion, to share your what is the truth of the gospel, and to offer that to somebody, that's going to be labeled hate speech. And again, it is now. And he says also the potential loss of educational and job opportunities, that we need to be prepared to recognize that what we stand on, that's going to cost something. And so are we going to choose to stand for Christ, or are we going to choose to kind of cower to that and submit to whatever is the dominant talking points in our society? Are we going to kind of submit to that, or are we going to do what God would have us to do? He says another is a subsequent loss of influence in schools, government, society in general, the possible loss of tax exempt status. And I've heard many people talking about that's unfair. The church shouldn't have that advantage over others, and they need to pay their fair share of taxes. Why should they get that freebie, that perk, just because they're a church? So he says that certainly is going to make an impact in the purchase of property and buildings and just the day-to-day functions of a church. Also, an ever-increasing perception of evangelicals as intolerant, divisive, and backward. Are we not seeing that today? So I appreciate the nature of this book, and even coming back to it after several years of the first time that I saw it, and seeing that, wow, this really is, these things are coming true. These concerns are valid. They were back then, and they certainly are today. So we need to pay attention to that. I appreciate how Terry Coy has laid out some of this. I'll just mention a couple of things. If you're watching this, you can see he's got kind of a matrix there, a grid to be able to plot on there where certain values, certain statements are made by others. This is called the authority matrix. He's got a couple of others within the book. I'll point out one other in just a few minutes, but it's we go from, on one axis, the objectivity axis, from objective to subjective, and then from least authoritative, the Bible is the least authoritative, to the Bible is the most authoritative. So within that, just an example, he's highlighted, if we look at the extreme, the more objective, and towards the Bible being the most authoritative, we'll see these kinds of statements: that the truth is revealed by God, that the Bible is authoritative and can be trusted, that theology done in, by, and for the church is where we need to focus. And so that would just be an example. So on the opposite end of that, with the more subjectivity and with the Bible being least authoritative, would be things like relativism. In a postmodern worldview, we'd see the statement that truths are not to be imposed on others. We see something like, at best, the Bible has a spirituality that is, quote, true for you, and if that works for you, that's good. And he says that, obviously these are things that are going on in our society now, and that as Christians we need to be aware of those things as we come to talk to others who are of a different mindset, and we need to kind of recognize that those things are going on, and be able to speak intelligently about that. Another matrix that's in this is the love and truth matrix, and where he puts us high on love. That's love versus condemnation. That's on that y-axis, and then from compromise to truth on the x-axis. So if we look at the height of love and truth, would be things like Jesus and the adulterous woman, and that scene that we're familiar with in the Bible. Also, that it would take sin seriously and hold tightly to grace. That salvation by grace through faith, which leads to good works, is typified there in the love and truth part of that axis. So we see where Terry's going with this kind of thought, and with his statements. I appreciate this book so much that he was able to see what was going on in the world, and to understand that, yes, even historically, this is not new, by the way, but even historically, we see that as Christian influence subsides within a society, within a culture, within the world even, that what we see is that, as the book indicates, return to the margins. So we're being marginalized, and that's okay, because that's where the church strengthens. That's where the church actually starts to gain some influence and gain some depth and authority, and that's where the church grows. That's where the people, we've heard the illustration of the Chinese underground church, that it's it's millions. It's grown, and it's something that nobody's supposed to know about, not officially anyway. So it is something that this persecution has led to great growth and depth in the Christian church, wherever that is being practiced. So again, something for us to remember and even hold on to. I think that's an element of hope for us there, that even though these things are going on, we're kind of, as a Christian nation, that's slipping, but we can be assured, as it has happened so many other times in history, that that's really where the church gets some strength, and it really starts to grow. So another thing I'll point out, and I always do about with these book recommendations, that there is in the back of each of these chapters a section of questions for reflection and discussion. Great questions here, some probing questions that this could be very easily used for a Bible study group, or a group of, I can see a pastoral staff looking at this book and trying to understand where we are and where we're going as a Christian culture within our churches, and just to be able to remember and to encourage each other to stay strong. I think Terry Coy does an excellent job of doing that, and I'd recommend this book very much. It's called Return to the Margins: Understanding and Adapting as a Church to Post-Christian America by Terry Coy. And again, I appreciate him writing this book. It's one book that's on my shelf that's been helpful to me in my ministry. And we would like a recommendation from you. We appreciate you listening to the Church Resource. And if you have a book that you would like us to take a look at and recommend or just review, you can do that at thechurchresource@gmail.com. That's thechurchresource@gmail.com.